If you think Game of Thrones was brutal, let me tell you about medieval Sweden. We're diving into a story of assassination, revenge, and the bloody, chaotic birth of a kingdom. It's an absolutely foundational piece of history. So, just imagine this for a second. Imagine a kingdom where the king basically serves at the pleasure of his most powerful nobles. If they don't like his policies, or maybe they just don't like him, they can just get rid of him and then elect a new one. This wasn't some hypothetical scenario. This was the political reality in early medieval Sweden. You see, their system was totally different from the rest of Europe. While other kings were claiming to rule by divine right, Sweden's monarchy was built on a really fragile contract with this powerful nobility, a group with deep roots in Viking traditions. And this gave them immense power. It created a state of almost constant instability, and it actually planted the very first seeds of what would one day become the Swedish parliament, the Riksdag. All right, so to really get how Sweden made it through all this, we're going to walk through the story in 5 parts. We'll start with the divided tribes, then get into a 60-year royal blood feud, see the rise of the guys who are really pulling the strings, meet the dynasty that finally forged a nation, and then we'll end with the huge twist that unites 2 whole kingdoms. Okay, first things first. You have to understand that early Sweden wasn't really one unified nation, not at all. It was more like a fragile kingdom made up of rival tribes, mainly the Swedes up north and the Geats down south. This division was like a geologic fault line, and pretty much all the future conflicts were built right on top of it. And that brings us right to the heart of this era's conflict, a multi-generational blood feud between 2 royal dynasties, the House of Sverker and the House of Erik, both fighting for control of the Swedish crown. And look, this wasn't just politics. This was deeply personal, and it was incredibly bloody. For the better part of 3 generations, the cycle was brutally simple. One house would grab the throne. The other would plot their revenge, kill the king, and take the crown for themselves, only to get killed a few years later by the son of the guy they just murdered. It was relentless. And the violence just never stopped. Look at this. In 1156, Sverker I is murdered. Just 4 years later, his replacement, Erik IX, is also killed. Then Erik's son comes back and returns the favor in 1167. This goes back and forth, battle after bloody battle, until we get to 1222. By then, both dynasties were so depleted, so totally exhausted by the constant war, that the nobles were forced to elect a child as king just to try and stop the bleeding. So, with the 2 main royal houses pretty much in ruins, a massive power vacuum opened up. And as we know, politics abhors a vacuum. So, into this void stepped a 3rd power, the Folkungar, an incredibly powerful clan of nobles who'd basically just been waiting in the wings for their chance. Now, here's a point that can get a little confusing, so let's clear it up. The Folkung dynasty, which is also called the House of Bilbo, was the specific family that rose to power. But the Folkungar movement was actually a much broader alliance of nobles who used that same name to fight against a strong king and defend their own privileges. So yeah, the family and the movement with the same name, they eventually became bitter enemies. You see, during the reign of that boy king, Erik XI, the real power wasn't sitting on the throne. Oh no, it was held by the king's own brother-in-law, a man from that Folkung clan, who held the title of Jarl, or chief. His name was Birger, and he was the absolute mastermind who was truly running the country from behind the scenes. Birger Jarl was, without a doubt, the architect of modern Sweden. While he was ruling from the shadows, he crushed rebellions, he established a single, unified legal code, he spurred on economic growth, and, get this, in 1252, he founded the city that we now know as Stockholm. The man was building a nation piece by piece. Birger Jarl's influence became so absolute that when the time was right, his family didn't just stay behind the scenes. They became the main event, officially taking the throne and establishing themselves as the new royal dynasty. So when King Erik died without an heir, the path forward was crystal clear. The nobility elected Birger Jarl's own son, Valdemar, as the new king. The kingmakers had officially become the kings. The Folkung dynasty was born. But, of course, the family drama was far from over. Valdemar was eventually overthrown by his much more capable younger brother, Magnus. And Magnus would go on to earn one of the coolest nicknames in all of Swedish history, Ladulas. Ladulas, it literally means barn lock. He got this name by passing a law that forbid powerful nobles from just showing up and demanding food and shelter from peasants while they traveled the country.
It was a simple but hugely popular reform that showed everyone he was protecting the common folk. He was, quite literally, putting a lock on their barns.
And his work went way beyond just that. Magnus Barnlock continued his father's massive project of nation building. He centralized the government, he finished creating a single law for the entire kingdom, he officially banned slavery, and he truly, finally solidified the power of the monarchy over all those feudal lords. Now, you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? A strong dynasty finally brings peace and quiet. But no, the cycle of violence wasn't quite over. In a tragic bit of irony, the Folkung dynasty's own brutal family feuds would plunge the kingdom right back into chaos and lead to a completely unexpected ending. Things took an incredibly dark turn. After years of civil war between Magnus's sons, the reigning king, Birger, invited his two brothers to a Christmas feast in Nykopen Castle in 1317. It was all a trap. He seized them, threw them into a dungeon, and literally starved them to death. The sheer brutality of the Nyköping banquet horrified the Swedish nobility. They had seen more than enough. And so, in the year 1319, they decided to act, using that same power they had always held over the crown. They rose up in a massive rebellion, they kicked King Birger off the throne, and in his place they elected a 3-year-old boy. This was Magnus, the son of one of the murdered dukes. But here's the crazy part. Through his mother, this toddler was already the heir to the throne of Norway. And just like that, the endless, vicious cycle of internal conflict ended in a historic union. The nobility's power to fire the king, the very thing that had caused so much instability for centuries, is what led directly to the moment where the crowns of Sweden and Norway were united under a single ruler for the very first time. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? The forging of Sweden wasn't some clean, noble process. It was a messy, brutal, multi-generational struggle for survival. But it was through this exact chaos, this constant tension between the crown and the nobility, that the foundations of a truly unique and powerful kingdom were laid, one that would eventually grow into a major force on the European stage.